to Straight Talk with me and Mel. Hey, Jeffrey and Nightmare.
Hi, everybody. Believe it or not, it's actually Mel live back from bronchitis hell, and I'm so glad to be here. I want to thank Lori so much for holding down the fort this past month, and a big shout out to Meg for guest hosting 2 weeks ago. I so appreciate you guys, and it's so great to be back, Lori. I missed you.
We missed you too. I had lots of people, they were excited about today's episode, and I told them it was going to be a little heavy. So a lot of them were like, well, I don't know if I could be there for that one. I said, well, we can't be all jokes and, easy topics. Sometimes we do got to go, hey, Peninsula, and hey, Janie, how you doing?
Janie, Loki, Punenzioni. Hey guys, and hey to everybody else listening. So glad to be back and so glad to have y'all. Even heavy subjects will still find some fun.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is it is what it is. Hey, Miss Luck. The whole idea behind our show is that and for those listening who wonder who the heck we're talking to, we're not hallucinating. We're talking to people in chat, and including them. And if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to join in on chat because we love your comments and your feedback, and that's what really makes it. Sin, hey Sin and Ginger. So glad to see you guys. I missed my Lori's World family.
Hey,
Um,
Bonnie.
so it's one of those things where even if we're talking about something serious, we can still have some fun. So
Yeah. Hi,
anyway,
Joker. If you snuck in, you and Bonnie on me.
oh, you guys are sneaky. You're sneaky. You're sneaky. Sneaking in. Oh, Bonnie, I didn't see you either.
See,
Hey.
I happened to see it in the chat. Somebody said hi, and I was like, "Wow, okay, I gotcha."
And
So,
and Joker too. I missed that too. Man, I'm too busy chatting. But anyway, today we were wanting to look. Laura, you explain it because you're the one who did a better explanation to me.
so we want to talk about how past trauma of any type, loss, cheating, abuse, self doubt, self loathing, or lack of self worth, how it can affect you moving forward in your future relationships or your present relationships. Because if you don't value yourself, how can you expect somebody else to value you?
Right, and we've been wanting to talk about this now for what, a month?
Yeah. We got this
So
yeah, about a month ago. Somebody kind of touched briefly on trauma, and then you got sick, and Lord willing, now you're back and you're toward the end of that, and that's amazing.
thank you. Yeah, bronchitis and I are not good friends. But yeah, so the the concept today is that, let's face it, we're humans. We all have pasts. We Unless you're in your very first relationship, and it could be dating, it could be marriage, it could be anything. So we're just going to throw the word relationship out there to mean any kind of relationship. Jacksonville Joe Duval.
Hey, Joe.
I got to be careful if I say that too loud. One of my dogs is trained to bark twice, for Duval. um, we're just going to say any kind of relationship. Okay, it could be uh,
Even
straight,
self,
gay, yeah,
self
straight,
love.
gay, marriage, dating, anything. And self love. If Whatever kind of relationship you're in. Hey, Xana May. Hey, my
Hey,
good
Zach,
friend.
how you doing?
Hey, Xana. There's my buddy. There's my girl. Um, we've got life experiences. We don't just like show up into a relationship and go, boom, here I am. I have nothing in my past. if
That's
if you
true.
if you're that lucky, wow, we really need to do a whole show about you. Even in my first relationship, I was 15 when I met the man that I ultimately married 5 years later. And you still have things that happen to you as a kid and in your families and stuff. So you still have issues and things that affect you. And So the key here is what we're talking about today is we don't go through life unscathed. Things happen to us, or we wind up maybe developing depression, anxiety, or experiencing things that cause PTSD or grief or whatever. And like Lori said, even our relationship with ourselves, how do these things affect us? And then how do we deal with it so that when we get into a relationship, we can say, this happened to me and it's a part of me, but it doesn't define me. It's not all of me. Because if we let it take over us, then that's a major red flag in a relationship. And it's probably going to affect that relationship and any other relationship we have, including future relationships. So, one thing in the chat maybe that I'd like to see is what are some things that you think, not necessarily you, but that people might have experienced that could potentially affect relationships? I, I like
I'll
what
tell you one.
Pinocchio said, drama is trauma.
Yeah,
That's true. Trauma is
yeah.
drama.
For me, I will tell you one from way back is I grew up around divorce.
Okay.
So, except for my grandparents, I didn't know that relationships could last for long times or forever. Because for me, so when I got married at a young age, got divorced, I'm thinking, okay, this is just normal. It got hard. People, they just leave. There's not forever anyways. So that was a trauma that it wasn't even a trauma, but it was more of that doubt or that experience that I brought into my relationships, thinking, okay, if it fails, it's no big deal. You know what? You just move on.
Yeah, lack of
Because,
permanence. You had
yep,
no model for permanence in a relationship. So, and Zanime saying like cyber mobbing, children, teens, and adults these days growing up in this world of the internet, people being attacked on the internet and that feeling of anxiety and insecurity and being stalked and things like that, that can definitely affect somebody in a relationship. What it does in terms of feeling secure, how it can affect your relationship, your family, your own sense of security. That's another big one that I think a lot of people don't stop to think about. Loki says, I've got more baggage than a Greyhound bus. Oh, I could put mine next to yours, Loki. What else do you folks in chat think are some things that people bring into relationships that could affect them?
like I'm curious how many people have been cheated on or been the cheater. And then when it comes time to a new relationship, as soon as somebody's late or they forget to call or they forget something, automatic, your mind goes to like, oh, or you, as an escape route. Oh, I'm pissed at him. You know what? That's okay. I can go find somebody else to get what I need. Or, you know, that is another type of trauma too. Sin.
We've got some, we've got some people pleading the fifth. Yeah, dirt from the past. Yeah, that either has been done to us or kicked on us. Yeah, definitely cheating, um, untruths or half truths, or maybe not finding out the whole truth or the truth. I know one for me that's affected some relationships is dishonesty or
Yeah.
kind of what I call like lying by omission. So then I
Let's
like
go
trust
ahead.
is a big thing.
Yeah. And he said dirt from the past. That's kind of a good example. And to touch on that, you got to think about this. You're in a relationship and somebody does something and it hurts you. If you choose to stay and forgive that person, holding on and using that dirt from what happened in the past as a weapon will be another type of trauma that you're inflicting now on the other person. Because when you chose to stay and forgive, you're supposed to let that go so
Yes.
that it doesn't carry over, because that could carry over too. And you can end up, you might as well have just left if you think that's going to be a problem. Now, we all do it. We all hold it and sometimes throw the past up, but it's not something that is a badge of honor.
No, and we discussed that, I think, in our very first episode when we talked about fair fighting, that once something's been dealt with, we need to let it go.
Yep.
We need to say, okay, that's been put to rest. Now it doesn't, that's another thing when we're rebuilding trust, or when we're talking about, rebuilding or building a relationship, we have to be responsible for that. That's on us. And I think that's important. Because people they'll bring that up and they'll throw it like clods of dirt, like, oh, remember when you said, yeah, and that's not
Miss
good.
Luck, if you ever need to talk, find me on IG and I'll be glad to talk to you.
Yeah, or stick around after the show, because you choosing to live is an important daily choice, and we're glad you're still around. And there's there's a reason you're choosing to live. You may wonder what it is, but I want you to hold on to that fact that you are choosing to live. Your
And you
life is
found us. So
your
there's
life
a reason you
is
found
worthwhile.
us.
Yes, your life is worthwhile, and I want you to stick with us. And we need to talk more about that. Um, that's extremely important. Whatever has
Yep.
happened to you or affected you, you are a survivor, and you have become a thriver. And I want to go back to the statement I made earlier. We are not what has happened to us. We're bigger than that. And we are not defined solely by what has happened to us. We need to choose not to be defined by those things, not to be defined by our abuse or by our loss or by our grief or by our trauma, but to look at all the things that make us up as a person, our personalities, our intelligence, our wit, what we contribute to the world. So, Miss
And
Luck, I
each
want you
day
to think
shows
about
that
that.
you're stronger than you think. Each
Yes.
day that you get up and you go and you do what you're doing, if you get even one smile to your face or something makes you happy, you just won. You're winning.
Or
You're
if you can put
stronger
us,
every day.
yeah, put a smile on somebody else's face.
Yep.
Volunteer to do something, share the fact that you did wake up today and that your choice to live is making a difference for somebody else. That's important. Yes, Panunzion, life it's a precious gift. Military. Xana May mentioned military. Yes, experiences in the military definitely can come in and can affect one's life and how they relate to people in relationships, particularly if they're in relationships with people who were in the military. And that can extend to PTSD. There may be civilians who have PTSD, but they can't relate maybe to PTSD from military sources or from what
Also, with
military,
them being gone, they're
right,
separated a lot. So,
deployments, and from
yeah.
just what military life is like. I'm a military brat. I can tell you what military life was like on my end, but I can't relate to military life for military personnel.
I think it's easier for us that not only grew up in the military, but we served, and we have to play both. We became not only the soldier, but we also became a veteran and a spouse of a veteran
Yeah.
or a soldier. So for us, it's a lot more. It's still hard for even us. I mean, that's the thing we have to deal with, especially getting out and like when you're a veteran or a soldier, we have our own identity, But once we're civilians, we have become the spouse of this one, the spouse of that one. And it could be a way to lose your identity of who you are too, from where you were and now what you've become. But you got to look at it that you also are in another part of your life. It's still you. It's just a different part of you. And you just got to love yourself and find your own voice, your own identity, and realize that you matter no matter what you're doing or where you're at in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of people who leave the military, it's hard to reestablish an identity for themselves because the military was all they knew for so many years. I don't know if it's gotten any easier for people to reintegrate into civilian life than it once was. Hey, Meg,
I
and
think it depends on the people. the person.
Yeah.
It's an individual thing, that it's a personal relationship inside themselves, that's that strength, that one day at a time, not putting those boots on it, but in fact taking those boots off permanently. It's a
Yeah.
whole different, yeah.
Yeah, for military, for first responders, and I want to say even for myself as a counselor, when I retired, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, so I couldn't even go do volunteer work, and my loss of identity was huge. So I think even for things like retirement, that can affect us in relationships because we're at a different phase in our life, and it's kind of like, well, who the hell am I right now? I know I'm the grandmother of this group, so I just aged myself, but
You've done that a long time ago, Mel.
yeah,
It's okay.
different phases of life, and stepping from military or first responder or from different jobs, things like that can really impact relationships as well. Meg, real quick, just want to shout out a big thank you for guest hosting 2 weeks ago. I really appreciate you. Jacksonville Joe mentioned moving a lot, so it ended up being a easy way to cut off friends and relationships. I think that is something that's huge
Yep.
for people to think about, and that again, it kind of that lack of permanence. And for some people, there's the thought of, well, I can always get a divorce, or this relationship can easily be replaced by another one. I don't
Yep.
I don't have to worry about a commitment because you're replaceable. Well, we're all replaceable. Making commitments can be short term, but I don't know. For me, once I've made a commitment, I try not to think about how easy it is to get out of it. It's because I've put a lot of work into it. I think for some people, though, and what Joe's saying, that when you've moved a lot, or when relationships have been fleeting for whatever reason, that can be a factor in why it's harder to maintain them, why it's easier to leave them. Zanime saying seen a lot of military relationships fail, so you just stay away from them. Like, hey, nope, not gonna go there.
And see,
That's
that's another trauma that you're putting onto yourself, afraid to move forward because you saw others fail. Doesn't mean you're going to fail. And if you do, so what? Guess what? It's just experience, so that the next one, you know what you need, what you want. That's how I look at it. You've got to, when something gets you down or throws that curve at you in life, find something that you can pinpoint. Like, example, deployments. I didn't look at it as a year. I looked at it bi-weekly, because, or even monthly. 12 months sounds a lot better than 52 weeks, right? So you don't look at the time, you look at 1 month at a time. So that way you have to concentrate on, make a vision of what you're looking for the future, and concentrate on that. And each time you meet those goals, even if you don't quite hit the jackpot per se each time, you've just learned something about yourself, that you're capable of a relationship, period.
yeah. I think the other thing, and this is something that was pointed out to me recently, and I was reminded of, is that, well, for one thing, I know that I'm as imperfect as they come, and I pretty much point that out to myself daily. Sometimes I kind of beat myself up with that, and I need to be careful about that. Um, but a friend mentioned to me that sometimes we have to work on extending some grace and mercy, um, to ourselves and to the people that we're. Thanks for stopping by, Zanime.
Bye,
Uh,
Zanime.
Extending some grace and mercy to ourselves and to the people around us, whether they're friends or we're in a relationship or whatever, because these things that have happened to us in life, particularly the things that are the most traumatic, or the things, maybe they weren't even the most traumatic, but they just had a big impact on us. Sometimes it's hard to forgive ourselves, or it's hard to let go, or it's hard to forgive others. And I think I have trouble sometimes forgiving myself, or giving myself a little grace. And I know sometimes it's easier for me to forgive others than myself. And one of the things I'd like for people in the chat to consider and the people listening to consider is this whole thing kind of picking our battles. Would we rather be right, or would we rather hold on to our relationship, nurture it, move forward, and grow? We get so caught up in the battle that we lose sight of how precious a relationship really is to us, including our relationship with ourselves. I don't know how people feel about that.
And there's ways to even do that. I mean, just if you're right, instead of rubbing it in, there are ways to wait till the situation calms down and then just explain your point of view. And sometimes that's enough. But in the heat, trying to prove you're right, there, you got embarrassment or just being made to feel less than. It all seems to go back to fair fighting, though, too, doesn't it? With yourself and with others.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. This whole concept of extending grace to ourselves and letting go of the past, not forgetting about it. We are products of our past, but again, I think we have to be careful of how much of the pain, anger, depression, anxiety, how much of our history do we let that influence us to the point that it finds us so deeply that it impacts who we are now. We've got the opportunity, we're kind of like artists of our own life. We've got the opportunity to repaint ourselves or to paint new pieces of ourselves and to define who we want to be and how we want to be. Just because I was anxious yesterday doesn't mean I have to be anxious today. Or just because I was afraid of a relationship 6 months ago doesn't mean I have to be afraid of it today. So instead of blaming a lot of external factors, I have to take responsibility for, okay, that happened. Now what do I do? In Jacksonville Joe, I think you're exactly right. We're harder on ourselves, and if we can't love ourselves, how do we expect somebody else to love us?
You know what
You're
works for me when I'm trying to get past a past to move to a future is I look back and I'll be like, all right, so now I know what they did wrong or what I did wrong or my part. So now that was to me, I take it as a learning experience that this is how I move forward. Because if
Yeah.
I would have just, sometimes it's just the anger, you forget to say just that one word that could have just stopped it all. And you're going to
Mhm.
live with that regret too, because you just let your anger override it. So sometimes if you just, for me, the way to get past it and try to help is I've just let myself realize is, all right, so I might have won this point, but what did it cost me? So now I know I don't want to do that and end up with this result. So, I mean, find little steps that you could take that help you move past to show that you are above what happened to you or that you caused to yourself, because we do inflict our wounds.
Yeah. And I think saying I'm sorry goes a long way, and then putting the actions behind those words by not repeating the same mistakes. I tend to sometimes put too much pressure on some things, maybe because I don't have all the information. So I need to I need to, not pressure a situation. I need to get more information, or the other person maybe needs to give me more information, so then that way I know to back off, and I need to recognize when I'm putting that pressure on, and to not only say I'm sorry, but then be aware. Self-awareness is is really an important thing in relationships. Are we repeating the same mistakes because we said we're sorry, but we're not making any changes? And that's where we get to kind of repaint and reorganize and redefine ourselves, which is pretty cool. We don't have to be the exact same person we were yesterday. Um, Loki, I'm not ignoring what you said. You know, you're in a unique situation, you know, um, being a situation on a reservation. Yeah, being sure you're not related. Um, but, you know, I've come to know you a bit, and there's a lucky lady out there who really needs to do some searching for you as much as you looking to search for someone else.
He should put himself out there a little bit more because, we've had a lot of people who have met on the internet, and it might take a while. But you know what? Nothing wrong with out of the blue, just no matter how hard it is, set a goal and, like, you know what, this weekend, I'm going to go meet this person. Even if it's just halfway, even, you know, you just got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, well, that's how I met my current boyfriend. That's how I've met people before, and I don't know what that's like up in Montana near the reservation, Loki. But you know, you meet some duds, you meet some spuds, and then you meet some you
And
meet
go
some.
across the border. I mean, he's right there. Maybe he could strike up a friendship with somebody right on the border, and they can stand on the edges of the border and just, start talking that way. I mean, there's so many different possibilities, especially with the internet today.
It might have to warm up first. They'd freeze to death right now.
He's used to that weather. I swear, it's like Eskimo in his blood too.
Hey, Iron Horse. Yeah, Miss Luck, you just brought up something really too. Chronic pain. You know, I deal with chronic pain physically, chronic pain emotionally. Um, I hear you. Um, and I don't know if you're saying failures, personal failures, or people have failed you, but I get that being let down adds to that. But you just said something that I really want people to hear. You said, I dare to hope for a wee bit better. Hope is the reason you get up every day. And hope is what we have to hold on to. It really is, because there's probably not a person in this chat or a person listening who at one point or another maybe hasn't wanted to give up hope. And yet we've kept going because for some reason or another, when all else failed, we still had at least a little bit of hope. And I admire you for that. Despite being let down and despite failures and despite pain, you dare to hope for a little bit better. And that says an awful lot about you.
And you know what? She doesn't mind us saying, we have a woman in our community, 4 times cancer. She just found out after being stage 4, she's in remission. Because as bad as she's in pain and everything that she's been put through in the last few years, just getting up and, hey, duct tape face, just trying, getting up every day and choosing that this is the day she's going to keep that spirit up. It does work. And it's pain is the hardest, I think, one of the hardest traumas to get over. And because it absorbs your whole world. But Miss Luck, you're on here, you talk to people, you're meeting new people, you have a lot to say and a lot to offer. Right there, you're kicking that pain in the butt every day. You're winning your battle every day, and you just don't even, maybe you can't see it, but the rest of us can. Hey, Dustin.
Hey, Duct Tape Face. Hey, Dustin. Yeah, pain. I think pain is one of the hardest. Chronic pain is one of the hardest because it's, it's with us every day. You know, it's not something that you can get away from. And, you know, even if you get momentary relief, I think sometimes we're always kind of waiting for when it's going to come back, you know, when it's going to slap us down again. And so then we're always kind of having that anticipatory anxiety of, well, am I going to get 15 minutes relief, an hour's relief? And it's not just the physical pain, it's the mental pain too, and it wears you out. I get that. Um, but here you are saying, I dare to hope for a little bit more. And gosh, that tells me so much about you. And
Strength. She's strong.
I think some of the people I've known with chronic pain and with serious illnesses, and I'm not saying this to just give platitudes. I'm thinking about my own mom who had ovarian cancer. I'm thinking about people in my life now. I'm going to get a little choked up. Some of the strongest people I've ever known. Seriously. Because despite pain, trying to knock the bejesus out of them, they just kept going the best they could.
How can I let something get me down if what Tim went through, he gets up every day?
Yeah, the guy went through so much, 4 Purple Hearts,
5 explosions, blown
five.
up 5 different.
Yeah,
I feel like, man, what a wimp if, I break a bone and I want to, and he's sitting there and he's like, I broke, so many bones, and it's like, you're right. If he can do it, but I understand that the chronic is just, yeah, I know what he goes through too, but him choosing every day to do what he does, that's my hero. And Miss Luck, based on what you're saying, I mean, my hat's off to you. I mean, every day you're still around, and she puts such nice comments on some of my videos. She comes in the chat, she interacts with people. She's a strong woman. I
she's
hope she
lifting.
gives her.
Yep, she's lifting other people up despite her own pain. That's a
Yeah,
gift.
so I hope she realizes just how special that is and how much everybody appreciates her. So
Yeah, and like Duct Tape Face said, never give up, never surrender. And I think I don't know, I was having a rough couple of days, and I got news yesterday that it's a friend of a friend, but I've met these people. They're actually refugees from a country in Africa that is a war-torn country with a lot of genocide. And my best friends sponsored them to come to the United States 5 years ago, and they came with their 2 young boys. They eventually brought his mother and his brother here, and then 3 years ago they had a little girl. And I learned that 2 nights ago there was a horrible fire in one of the family's apartments, and the 3-year-old little girl perished along with the man's mother, and his brother is clinging on life support in Florida. He was severely burned. And all of a sudden, I was just hit with such perspective, like, who in the heck am I to think that I have any problems in my life
mm,
when a 3-year-old child just died in a fire, when they just lost their daughter? So I think sometimes when we're at our lowest, or at a low point, because I'm certainly not at my lowest, sometimes when we hear about others' pain and grief and loss, I don't know about you guys, but that was like I got bopped over the head with a 4x4. Major perspective.
don't understand dogs who can go out, circle the whole house outside anytime they want. They just want to sit in the house and bark.
Loki, I
I
like what
got you.
I like what you said. Pain is a reminder we're still alive, and conquering pain's the best way to be strong. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And conquering pain comes in different ways. And sometimes we may not conquer it, but we we find ways to deal with it the best we can.
And
Dustin, I know you've had your struggles and your separation from your cousin, and there's so many different kinds of pain. One of the things that aggravates me the most is when people go into a one-upsmanship on pain. Like, my pain's worse than your pain. Pain is
Yes.
subjective. Pain is
Hey,
pain.
Kenny. It is. And I always hate somebody when you're telling them about your life and all of a sudden they've done it plus something better.
Yeah.
And it's like, you do not get to tell me what I accomplished or what I'm going through is not good or it's not for me, it's mine. And I don't let nobody take that from me.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Emily. Yeah, you may have had, three severed limbs. Well, they've had all four severed, plus they had a steel spike go through their eye. Okay, you win. You know. Um, the whole thing is just acknowledging the other's pain, and particularly in a relationship, if both of you have experienced loss and grief or trauma or depression or anxiety or PTSD or anything, acknowledge the other person's loss. It's not about, well, yours is worse, mine is worse than yours, or they both sucked.
Yep.
They both
Or they both
sucked.
were good or that you had good. Either way,
Yeah.
it's, yep.
Yeah. Maybe you've both had awesome experiences. Celebrate the fact that you've both had some awesome experiences in your life. Oh, your experiences were better than mine, or no, mine were better than yours. It's like, just just acknowledge, it's not about, oh, show me yours and I'll show you mine, and mine's better than yours or worse than yours.
Yep.
No, I'm not going there to a late night topic, guys. Hey, Kenny. But that's kind of where, that's the other thing that I think starts to affect relationships is, well, my grief is worse than yours, my trauma is worse than yours, or my relationships have been worse than yours. Yeah, stop that. Stop it
Yep.
right now. I'm going to have to staple a note to your forehead.
And one way also that you could get past stuff too is good advice. If somebody is trying to outdo you or somebody's trying to make you feel less than, think about this. Do you need or want their respect? If you don't, then they don't touch you. Right there, you already won. You get your own power and you find your own strength and your own power and what makes you happy. We can't let outside people always dictate how we find our happiness or how we get over our traumas or our pain. Um, but I will tell you, if you don't take care of your own self first, put yourself first, and you jump in after you go through a trauma or you've lived through trauma, and you expect that somebody's going to be able to come into your life and fix it for you, you just set yourself and them up to always fail in your eyes.
Yeah, really good point. We want our relationships to be supportive, but they
Equals.
keep they yeah, equals and supportive and compassionate and be there, but they can't be fixers.
Yep.
That's a really good point. Really good point. Hey,
They'll
Kenny.
always fail you. They will always let you down in your mind and you'll just decide to give up. And you're putting all yours onto their, and it's not their responsibility. It's our own personal responsibility to find what can make us get past that trauma or at least how to work in our lives with that trauma or that pain. Hey,
Yeah.
Carl.
Hey, Carhole. Hey, little Jeffrey. I think I read one of the things I read probably on Facebook somewhere, because Facebook wisdom is Facebook wisdom, but it's kind of like the some of the most meaningful relationships, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a romantic one, is that, when somebody in your life helps you to be kind of the best version of yourself, or allows you to be the best version of yourself. You're not trying to change them, they're not trying to change you, but you get to grow and be the best version of yourself. And I think that's kind of cool. You can experience the ups and the downs, and yet you can still make the changes in your life that you need to make to be your best version of yourself. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yep. And you know
Oh,
what?
iron, iron.
You don't need somebody else in your life to make you feel that you've accomplished something. Some
Yeah.
people are happy by themselves. Iron Horse, he's been alone for 13 years. He loves it. I bet he would be happy if he found somebody that he could share everything that he loves with somebody. But he loves himself, and the time that he's with himself, he doesn't mind. And right there tells you that he could make somebody else happy too because he's learned to love himself. He doesn't cling or need somebody else to justify who he is as a person.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes successful relationships is when people come into it and um, Eric Fromm in The Art of Loving said, I, I, instead of saying, I need you or I love you because I need you, it's more that I need you because I love you. You know, it's not that we love somebody because we need them because we love them.
See,
And
Tim has
so
a different. Tim says, "I don't need you, but I want you."
yes, and that was the other thing really that Fromm was saying is that love is based out of want. You know, that
Yep,
I want to be with you. I don't I don't I don't need to have you to be loved, but I want to be with you and I want to share love with you. And I think
yep,
that's really, really important. And Panunzio, yeah, you know, you loved yourself too, you know, that you realized that you were better off being divorced than to be in an unhappy relationship.
yep.
And
And it
sometimes
is okay to put yourself first.
yeah,
And if that's, but if you're letting past dictate your future happiness, that's what. It's not a bad thing, but it's not right, especially on the other person, because you're going to keep going in and you never know what kind of feelings that person has for you. But if you're holding on to your past and putting it on them,
yeah, yeah. And that's just it. I think again, if we're holding so tightly onto our past that we're letting it define us, and we're not even allowing ourselves to grow kind of out of our past and to develop new things in our present, then that's going to hold us back in relationships. You know, the reality is that we're not promised tomorrow. We don't know if we're going to have a tomorrow.
no,
So are we going to live in the past and be defined by it, or are we going to enjoy today with whatever that means? Iron Horse, you're cracking me up. The next woman that leaves me, I'm going with her because I'm tired of my shit also.
Mike just does what he's told. He says it seems to work. They've been together for a while, so that's a smart
Well, that could work too, you know, just do what you're told and everything works out. You know, if that works, that works. You know, Emily said, you know, no expectations. So that might work, you know. The thing about expectations though is really when we think about it, I think probably in most relationships there are some expectations. You know, I expect that I'm going to be with somebody who is kind. I expect
faithful.
that I'm going to be with somebody who's honest and truthful and faithful. Yes. So if I'm being honest, yeah, I do have some expectations. I think the key goes back to people communicating those expectations of one another. You know,
Yeah.
that you know what does somebody have expectations of me and what do I have expectations of them?
See, I wonder if what she's getting at, though, I think I understand, is like what she means is with no expectations, you don't go in there expecting that person to absolve you of all your pain or expecting that one to make your life perfect or happy. Um, and that's correct. You can't
Good point.
expect somebody else to do for you if you can't do it for yourself.
Yeah, very, very good point. Very good point. Like fix me, make my life perfect. I depend on
Yep.
you for happiness. Yeah, yeah,
I got,
exactly.
did I say it right, Emily? What you were, did I explain? Because when I read your comment, that's what I was getting. So if if I got it wrong, okay, I got it. All right, good. I just that's what I thought you were meaning, but
Got it.
so yeah, I
Yeah,
couldn't expect Tim. Tim was always telling me, "I know you don't believe in forever, but trust me, I do, and I'll get you through." And I liked what he said. He was just like, if you start to have doubts, just reach out for my hand and just know my hand. Whenever you reach out, my hand's going to be there still. It's going to be
Got
my hand. So I'm going to show you that it's possible and it's going to happen. But I wasn't expecting him to be the one to lead that. I have to put in the amount of work that he does, and just by our daily living, I can't expect him to take care of everything that I might have had from the past. Just like
yeah.
he never expected it of me. And maybe that's why it's working, because I was able to let the past of the not having that secure foundation show me that it doesn't matter what you came from, it's where you're going and where you're at.
I love that. It doesn't matter what you came from. It's where you are now and where you're going.
Yep.
And where we're going is kind of unknown. We may not know what the deep future holds, but we can still kind of look at, well, what's kind of in the immediate future? What are some goals we'd like to set? What are some things we'd like to do? What kind of what is it about our relationship that works, and what's the joy that we'd like to continue to find? I think that's the other thing, is maybe focusing more on positive, and reinforcing the positive of life that you'd like to bring out in a relationship. I like what Mike said, that you do you do have conversations when emotions aren't running high. When they're running high, take a time out, do what we talked about in our fair fighting episode, which was, if you can't talk right then because you need a break, say, I need a break. I need to not talk for an hour, or I need to not talk tonight. Don't go into radio silence without setting a limit, because radio silence is not healthy. It leaves the other person hanging
Yep.
and not good. But,
Loki,
healthy to take a break.
when he says he expects loyalty, and you it's rarely seem to find it, did you ever think, Loki, that by putting that expectation on that person, even though they can feel it, and so they feel like they have to live a certain way under a microscope, so you put pressure on them that it kind of forces it to look like it's I don't know how to explain it. What I'm trying to say is, by expecting it, I mean, you could want that and hope for it and strive by leading by example in the relationship, and that can help guide. But sometimes expecting something of somebody else, that's what we were getting at. That sometimes they're going to let you down because your expectations are up to here, and maybe they just have to learn and grow into that where you're at.
And
I don't know if I said it right.
is
Did I?
loyalty something that's discussed, up front?
Yeah,
So because I think that's important.
yeah. Because we all want loyalty, we all want faithfulness and stuff. But I can get loyalty from my dog. You know, um, we all want something, but I'm not going in there saying, okay, I'm setting this bar and they have to meet this bar. And if they don't, that's it, it's done and stuff like that. So we grow together, because what that person might think is loyalty versus what my thing is of loyalty is, that's why you discuss it up front and before you get serious. And then maybe, you know, they know what you're expecting or wanting. So yeah, you should be able to expect it. Yes. But maybe coming, if you tell them that you demand loyalty or something like that right off the bat, it's like, wait a minute, you're demanding of me and we just are getting started. I mean, maybe it's the wording that you're having, that when you communicate it, or the way you're talking to them verbally about it. Maybe that's why it seems like maybe you're not getting the type that you're looking for. But I agree, we all want the loyalty, and that is a basic expectation in a relationship. So I do get what you're saying. I just wonder, because you say you never find it, maybe it's something that happened to you in the past that maybe is carrying over and putting undue stress or pressure on you and the new person?
Hey, Ricky Bobby. I think like what Iron Horse said, loyalty, faithfulness, honesty, those are things that we expect in a relationship. Of course, he jokingly added in the occasional fist fight to keep things interesting. Um, I think communicating up front what we expect and then explaining it or defining it, I think is kind of what Loki and Lori are talking about. Y- You know, um, I know one of the things that my current boyfriend and I had the advantage of is we met online. We talked for hours on the phone before we met in person. And we really defined a lot of this stuff. We didn't just use the words. It was like, well, what I mean by this is because we I think we've both been disappointed by other relationships. We're both, kind of we're a later in life couple. And so we had the advantage of being able to talk and say, well, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is what I'm looking for in a relationship. So I think it's important that if we're talking about faithfulness or loyalty or honesty or trust, that that a couple talks about what that means to them. Okay, well, here's what monogamy means to me. Even though that may sound obvious, maybe it's not to the other person. Or here's what
Yeah.
loyalty means to me. Here's what honesty means to me. Here's what trust means to me. And maybe say why. Trust is a big thing to me because in the past, here's how my trust has been broken. Or loyalty is a big thing to me because in the past, here's how someone was not loyal to me. And what you're doing then is you're kind of giving that person a frame of reference so that they understand where you're coming from. And then they can do the same for you. They can say, well, here's why honesty is important to me because somebody was dishonest. And so it really eroded, my sense of what that relationship was all about. So I think when people can communicate more directly and explain things and give examples, then some of that pain and hurt and all those things that we kind of bring from the Greyhound bus into a relationship, we can define, and then it doesn't define us. We can leave it in the luggage compartment and not bring it out and not let it define who we are. We can move on with our relationship, if that makes sense.
Yep. And when we talk about different relationships too, friendships, you kind of almost expect the same thing from a friend as you do as a partner.
Yeah, and Dustin has even talked about like his relationship with his cousin Stephanie and how important that is to him. I think when we're talking about relationships, when I think about my relationships with my best friends, um, it's the same thing, that there's that desire for honesty and communication. And my two or three closest friends, we're honest with each other. We will say things that maybe the other doesn't want to hear.
Yeah.
It's said out of love because we do love and care for each other and we want the best for each other.
Yeah.
And that was a conversation that my best friend was talking to me about grace and mercy. And she's right. I have to extend it to myself and to the people that I love. So yeah, we need to expand these concepts not just to romantic relationships, but to other relationships in our lives.
See, for me, I like, I always tell somebody that I consider a friend, I want you, if I do something, come to me because I want to listen to your point of view. And when you say that, you have to walk the walk and talk the talk that you're talking.
Yeah.
I'd rather somebody who says they're my friend actually come to me, talk to me. And, we're all going to have our issues where that person's just going to get under our skin and we might need to vent, you know. Um, but after a couple of days, after you're done venting, talk to the person. Let them know, you know what, you pissed me off. I did say this or about this, and this is why I feel that you do. And I think when you have that kind of relationship where you're able to let that person come to you and tell you where you have let them down, um, and you could accept it, and that's another growth too that lets you know that another inner strength, if you're willing to listen, not just expect, but to listen and give the same back. It's healthy, even in a relationship or a friendship of any type.
Yeah. Hey, Susie Q. Yeah. See, I think that's key that, we can't read each other's minds.
Yep.
I have to be an empath. I pick up when something's good, when it's not good. I can kind of walk into a room and sort of read it, but I really can't read people's minds. So if somebody's feeling upset or frustrated or whatever, I still don't really know what's going on, and whether it's, in a relationship or with a friend or with a relative or with anybody else, we have to talk to the person. We have to say, when you said this to me or when you did this, I felt hurt or I felt disrespected or I lost trust or I felt this. Number one, own your feelings. It's not about blaming, it's about saying, I felt this when this happened or when you did this. I lost trust or I felt disrespected. So own your own feelings, but you have to talk to the person about it. They might not have thought it was a big deal. For one thing, number one, men and women see things very differently. So, a woman may have done something and the man may not have seen it the same way or vice versa. So we can't expect people to read each other's minds. We have to say, when that happened or when you did that, I felt disrespected or I felt that that was not loyal or I felt that that was
A betrayal.
a betrayal or that was not
Yep.
kind or considerate. And they may think, well, wow, I didn't even give it a second thought. So that's the only way people are going to know each other's perspective. They may not have done anything on purpose. They may have thought that what they did was there's nothing wrong, and maybe there wasn't, but it was just a lack of communication and seeing where each other is coming from. And what Iron Horse is saying, I think, is really key. He said, trust is a big one for him. Once you lose my trust, it's hard to earn it back. I can forgive, but I can't forget. I don't know, maybe other people in the chat can speak to that. I think trust is big for most people. Maybe it depends on how badly the trust was broken. I think for a lot of relationships, including friendships, trust is a pretty key ingredient. And when trust is broken, I can tell someone I forgive them, but trust does have to be reestablished or re-earned. I don't know how people feel about that. I'm seeing other people saying that they feel the same way.
Yep.
Um,
And see, here's another thing, bottling up everything inside. That is a problem because if you bottle it up, eventually something's going to be the breaking point that it's all going to come up. And they're not even going to know that that was an issue for that person. And then all of a sudden they're just being blasted with everything that you've kept inside because there's going to be that one thing that's going to trigger that big eruption. And they're going to be hurt and blindsided because they never even knew that this stuff is what's been bottled up.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And then you not only does that all come out at once, you can't address all that at once. That's like saying, here's the 20 years or the last 6 weeks or the last 4 months that I've just thrown up on you that have happened. I've just verbally vomited on you. And now, okay, what do we do? It's that's a lot. That's a whole lot. Um, it's it's not possible to kind of repair and deal with all of that at once. That's another reason why relationships, friends, family members, you have to deal with stuff as it comes along. It's kind of like if your car is breaking down, you kind of have to fix things as they happen. It's not like waiting until the jalopy's about to rust out and then you decide, okay, now I need to fix something. It's not going to work that way. Um, you have to deal with things as they arise because once that resentment and pressure and negativity builds up to a boiling point, it's hard to kind of put the genie back in the bottle.
That it is.
Miss Luck, I'm glad you were able to escape that as well, and that you were able to get away and feel safe. Um, and Emily, you're right. When somebody disappoints you, those feelings do often fall back on you. It's hard.
Hey, Red Eye.
You also brought up a good word, Emily, about boundaries. Let people show you who you are with your boundaries, and go from there. I think boundaries are really important, and I think it's important to let people know, have that discussion about boundaries. Here's what's okay, here's what's not. And when those boundaries get crossed, to again have that conversation and be honest.
Yeah.
And
Don't
that
let
can be,
it stew.
yeah, that can be with friends as well. Yeah, don't let it stew. When you go, and it's going to be different for different people. If you've got a rule of not going to bed mad or not holding grudges or whatever your rule of fair fighting is, don't abandon that. Stick to it. If you need a night or two to think about things, okay, that's cool. Communicate that. But don't let your communication break down to the point where then it makes it harder to come back and discuss whatever's going on.
And here's the thing about that too. Let's say that's your rule that neither one go to bed when you're angry, but somehow the other one just falls asleep. Don't go to bed mad yourself. If you have to, sit there and have your conversation with their sleeping body. While they're sleeping, get it all out or write it out. This way you're still getting to say what you have to say. That way when you go to bed, you for yourself are not going to bed angry.
Yeah,
It does
journal
help.
it. Yeah, journal it, write the notes in your phone, write what you want to say when you do have your conversation. Um, yeah, it's it's good that you even just plan what you're going to say. Miss Luck, it sounds like you've just had one thing after another, and
It's time for you to move, honey. It's time for you to find just, you know what? Say, it can't be any harder than where you're at. Pack it up and fly across the ocean or to another state or another country. Start over. You might find your happiness that way.
Loki, you said you tend to bottle things up. Are there things that you can do physically, like are there physical activities you like to do, or anything that helps you kind of discharge some of what you bottle up when you have a hard time talking about it? I know for some people, maybe if it's initially hard to talk about it, they'll get moving physically. They'll run, or they'll
Lift
engage in some
weights or,
hobby or
you know,
something.
you know. See, journaling might be for people who bottle it up. By putting it on paper, they're still keeping it to themselves, but it's coming out. The words will flow. And, you know, I've heard that that helps a lot of people, men and women.
Yeah, yeah. Journaling is journaling, drawing, singing, um, physical movement. Actually, physical exercise is one of the best. Yeah, I get it, Loki. You just have much opportunity to do those things. Yeah, I would just strongly suggest, even if it's doodling, doodling on a piece of paper. Sometimes journaling, just what I even suggest is whatever, you don't even have to write anything that makes sense, just writing whatever words start coming out on a piece of paper, it just, um, sort of stream of consciousness. You might start writing, like dog, spaghetti, fan, wind, snow, mountains. I can't stand this. And before you know it, you're starting to journal something that starts to get out what you're feeling. So the main thing is that the bottling up, like Emily said, it creates the resentment, and it's not only not solving the issue between you and the other person, it's doing damage to you as an individual,
Yeah.
physically as well as mentally. Cortisol's building up in your system. If you have chronic pain issues, it's making chronic pain worse.
And once it erupts, it's going to be bad for the other person because here it is, just something, it could be something small, but
Mhm.
yet you've got all this resentment, this anger that's going to turn into hate. And there won't, by that time, there probably is no coming back.
Yeah. And then that's also when people might have a tendency to self-medicate or to over-medicate or to do things that are not healthy. I'm not Loki, I'm not saying you would do that. I'm just
Yeah.
speaking in general. Um, so it yeah,
Or go
it's
physical.
yeah, or get physical, or do something that's damaging to themselves or to property or to somebody else. And so hey, Red-Eyed Patriot, it's one of those things that just to be mindful that sometimes it could be, maybe cooking something for yourself if you like to cook, or cleaning if you like to clean. Come on down to Florida, Loki, and I got some projects for you that you can do. we, we'll start in my garage. Um, just jump online, just whatever the things are that kind of can help you get rid of some of those things, even if it's a little bit at a time. um and Susie Q, I get what you say. Sometimes you got to have some time to cool off before you can talk about it. That's healthy. That's
Yep.
healthy. The key there is letting the other person know you need that time and how much. Because if you just walk off or if you just ghost and leave the other person hanging, it's not only not a good feeling for the other person, but it can start to build resentments and make things worse.
Yep. And always do go back and finish that conversation.
Yeah.
Always. Never leave it unspoken because for you, you could go about your business and think, okay, but for that person, you don't know how bad it affected them or what caused them to feel that way or to start the argument. You don't know. And so it's always, every time people do that, you do take a risk of adding that one more block to a wall that maybe you can't get over the next time. You never
Yeah.
know when you that wall too high that's insurmountable. Hey Jesse,
Yeah.
how's it going?
It's perfectly okay to say, give me 2 days, and then I'll call and we'll talk. But to just ghost somebody and let it go, not good. And you could push away, somebody really significant in your life that maybe you didn't mean to push away. I like what Penunzion was saying, that sometimes I'll write my problem on a piece of paper, and before I go to sleep I burn the paper and say tomorrow's another day. I actually used to do that with some of my clients when I was counseling. I worked in an inpatient facility one time, and there was a little pond next to it, and they'd write down, different things, maybe like a letter to somebody that they weren't going to actually send, but they'd get out like all their negative feelings, and then they'd wrap them
Yep.
around little pebbles and they'd throw them in this pond. And we used to laugh about all the fish and the turtles that were going, oh God, not again, incoming, because all these letters were getting wrapped around pebbles and getting thrown in the pond where they were going to dissolve. But you can do that, burn the letter, throw it in a lake, do something to get rid of it, because you're kind of symbolically getting rid of those negative emotions too. So that's a great thing to do. And
See,
you
I
too,
agree.
you
Mel, when you
too.
said 2 days, do you really think that's healthy to walk away and take 2 days while that other person is hurting or angry? I think because then that person's having to go to bed, and so are you with that.
Actually, no. But I will say, as a professional, I would say try not to make it more than 24 hours. But depending on personalities and depending on, this goes back to the rules of fair fighting. A relationship should have established ahead of time
Okay.
what's the maximum time we're going to go if we have an issue that for some taking care of you time and some thinking it over time. And so maybe ahead of time it would have been just said, okay, the max we're going to go is 24, or the max we're going to go is 48 hours. Um, so no, I wouldn't advise that. Um,
Okay.
I've had it done to me where it was like a week, and it not only sucked, but it actually made things worse. And yeah, so I really wouldn't advise that. This is where I would say, going back to rules of fair fighting, that people need to discuss ahead of time when we have a major disagreement, or when one of us is, maybe it's not even a disagreement, maybe somebody's feeling just freaking overwhelmed with life. So maybe they do need to take a couple of days. Okay, that's okay, but discuss it. Don't ghost. Ghosting has become more popular.
Popular.
Sorry about my dogs in the background. Ghosting has become more popular in our culture over the past several years. With internet, with pandemic, with even pre-pandemic, in the workplace, ghosting has become a thing. And I think in relationships, we need to take ghosting out
Yeah,
and
it's
not.
very immature. And
Yeah,
I mean, if you can't handle being a grown up, it's just like we used to tell our kids, if you can't discuss, per se, if you can't talk about sex, then that tells you you're not mature enough to be having it.
yeah, we need to take ghosting out of relationships, and we need to put time limits on things, not to be restrictive, but to be courteous, and to acknowledge that I'm leaving somebody hanging while I'm taking care of my stuff, which needs to be taken care of, and we need to give that person time. I'm leaving somebody hanging, and that's not good. So if somebody needs 48 hours or something, I'd say there are going to be times when that's necessary, but it needs to be communicated. As a
Yep.
rule, I would say for general disagreements and things, no, maybe that's too long. But I can see where if somebody's having a major personal crisis, or they're totally overwhelmed with life, I think if they would just communicate to their friend or their partner or whatever, I need 2 or 3 days, even maybe because I'm just having a real meltdown, that's different. But you're right. I think to go longer than maybe 24 hours under normal circumstances would not be advised.
Yeah, I would be crawling out of my skin. And, you know, by that time, who even remembers? That person might not even remember why you're mad at them, you've had to stew on this for days. To me, I can't do more than and Tim, I can't do more than a couple hours. And that is, I'm still crawling the walls with that. But I know he needs to go have a cigarette at least. So that was hard for me, but we had to learn that, okay, go have your cigarette, but yeah, and don't make a mistake of falling asleep on me. If we're talking and you fall asleep, don't wake up in the morning and say good morning, because I would more likely want to spit in your face.
That's going to be one of those, what's so good about it?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, this goes to show again that there's got to be an ebb and flow, and constant communication, and sometimes renegotiating, communication. Because here's the other thing: the relationship isn't all that's going on in people's lives. There's
nope.
other stuff. There's family stuff. There might be work stuff. There might be health stuff. There might be
Financial.
financial stuff. There's stuff going on in both people's lives. And so while the relationship is central between those two people and it's important, there's stuff going on in both people's lives. And so it's also important to recognize that, both people have stuff going on. And while one person might be overwhelmed and need to take a break, the other person might be overwhelmed with some other stuff too, and getting ghosted makes them even more overwhelmed. So it's about, okay, what was the song that Aretha Franklin was so famous for?
Respect.
RESPECT. Now my name's Melody, but I'm not going to sing it. Yeah, it's about respect, not just for the other person, but for yourself. Um, having self-respect and respect for the other person, so that you go, yeah, I need to communicate this, if that makes sense.
How do you get respect if you can't give it?
Yeah, yeah. So we have to extend respect to each other. And Mike has said sometimes he has to take several days. There are people on here saying, yeah, I've lashed out with words and cut deep and then really hated it afterwards. So, there sometimes we have to remember we can't take words back.
And it's okay to say them if you really feel them. Just be prepared. The consequences, you can't put that on the other person. If you're saying what, and it's good to say what you really feel, because honesty is a key. And if you really feel that way, then make sure you're prepared for the consequences, the backlash.
And sometimes I don't think it's what we say. I think it's how we say it.
And when we say it.
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially, and that's the other reason for taking the time out, because if we say something in anger, we're going to say something that maybe we don't mean. And maybe that's where we do need to give the person the benefit of some more time so they can really think things out. Um, it's critical that we get our point across, but that I don't want to say that we're overly sensitive to the other person, because we need to be able to express ourselves. But I I think we need to be, oh, what's the word, guys? I don't know if the word is diplomatic. We need to be adult about it. Emily says, if we're saying you need 2 effing days, no, just hit the road.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I know even from my point of view, that would violate the number one rule. We don't go to bed angry, because if you're going to take 2 days, one of us is angry still.
Yeah.
And you're putting that pressure on that other person to swallow it. So there's got to be that ease, that compromise where, like you said, we have to make, and even if you didn't know this when you first started a relationship, once you realize that there has to be that give and take, sit down and rediscuss it. You could be married 10 years, 20 years. And, but with the way a relationship always is changing as you are in stages of your life, you have to renegotiate. Even when you get a job or a promotion, or you want that promotion or a raise, you renegotiate. So relationships are the same way.
I like that, renegotiating, because
Yeah.
maybe it was originally identified as yeah, we'll handle conflict or we'll handle communication or disagreements this way. Maybe you find out that that's not working. And Susie Q said something, I think that's important, is that when somebody feels cornered, that's not going to work either.
No.
So there's two sides to this. Hey, Victoria. Yeah, there's definitely two sides to this. Being cornered doesn't feel good, and feeling like you have to wait forever doesn't feel good. So you go back to the other thing that's essential in relationships, which is negotiation and compromise.
Yeah.
You know, it's about negotiation and compromise. Now somebody says, well, I shouldn't have to negotiate and compromise with my partner. Um,
That's what it's about. That's what a partnership's about.
yeah, the easy thing about relationships is when they're easy, and I said this recently, when they're easy, they're easy.
Yep.
When they're hard. It's not the easy part that takes work.
Yep.
Um,
What
you
you
know,
put into it is what you get back out of it.
yeah, yeah. Hey, sunflower. Yeah, it's you know, I don't I don't know of anything in my life that was particularly easy.
That was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, some things maybe, but the times I've made mistakes were the times I learned the most. Um, the things that I've had to put hard work into were the things that were most rewarding. Emily, you just said something really super important. You have to let the person know their feelings are heard and valid. However, you still don't aren't taking days.
No, I
Uh,
agree.
yeah, that's the other thing. It's important to acknowledge that what the other person is saying is heard, that you understand, and that they've got valid points, whether you agree with them or not.
Yep.
you don't have to agree with everything, but it's important to let them know that they're being heard. I hear you. I hear you, and I hear that that was upsetting to you. I hear you, and that you were so overwhelmed. Um,
Because you got to
it goes,
remember, not everybody's going to have the same. Like I have a top 5 that I find important in a relationship. Doesn't mean that Tim has the exact same 5, but that's where the compromises come in. There's going to be those that you agree on that are the most important, and then you both can compromise to make sure both sides are getting what they need and what they need to grow together. If one's not willing to compromise, then yes, that person's not your, that's not for you. Because if
that's not,
you they expect you to change and they're not, you have a problem.
yeah, it's both partners have to be willing to change and grow. And I like what Emily said, you know, these are all personal boundaries. Everybody's are different.
Yep.
And if they don't, you know, kind of fit with yours, if they don't jive, maybe that's not your person. You have to maintain your self-respect and your boundaries. If I have a set of personal boundaries and I compromise those just to stay with somebody, then I've lost my self-respect. And or if somebody else compromises their boundaries to stay with me, they've lost their self-respect. Now, if we as a couple, or if a friend and I, you know, negotiate boundaries, or we negotiate things to grow together as a couple, that's different. But there's certain things that are just non-negotiables with me. When I'm in a relationship, monogamy and trust and honesty and good communication, things like that, they're just non-negotiables. And somebody, you know, my partner may have non-negotiables. So again, it's important to discuss those things up front and to know, okay, if those things are broken, what's the consequence? Does that mean the relationship is over? Does that mean we have to make adjustments? You know, what do we do? And somebody, you know, we've talked before about our relationships 50-50. I think relationships, my take on it is they're more 100-100. Am I putting, not my whole life, but am I putting everything about me for this relationship into the relationship? Not my whole
And getting
life.
nothing back. Yep.
Am I 100% committed to this relationship, not 50% committed to the relationship? And is my partner 100% committed to this relationship? That's kind of how I look at it. But we still obviously have other aspects of our lives. It doesn't mean that my whole world centers around this person. Um, so yeah, I like that, Mike, that if with your 72 hours, it's understood by both of us, and that you said things that you meant when you were angry, but you don't truly feel like that, or truly feel that way. Does that mean, Mike, that when you guys come together and discuss it, and if this is too personal, don't say it, but have you guys been able to work it out so that um those words, or it's understood later that you didn't mean what you said in anger?
Yeah, that's where he is. That's why they agreed to the 72 hours, because this way, things that are said when he's angry, he meant it at that moment, but not what he means in life on a whole. So they agree to address it rationally later. They can
Okay.
always circle back.
Yeah, yeah, because you're right. You can't take those words back. When they're said, they're said. Hey, Maria. Once it's out there, it's out there. And the thing is you may come back later and say, I didn't mean that, but the other person heard them. And they not only heard them, they felt them.
Yep.
And when they felt them, it it did something to them. One of my things is, after I've heard certain words or after I've felt a certain thing, I can't unfeel it. If I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
I can't unfeel that I felt disrespected. Um, I can forgive, but I can't unfeel how I felt in that moment. So we have to think about the consequences of what we say and what we do. If I disrespected someone else, they can't unfeel that disrespect. So I have to think about the consequences of my words and actions. If I pressured somebody, they can't unfeel that pressure. So it goes beyond just our words, it goes beyond how somebody feels because of what we say or what we do. What are some things that you folks in the chat have found have been ways to not let your past interfere with current relationships, to not let your past relationships or past trauma or other things in the past? What are some things you've successfully found to keep the past from interfering with your present? Let's hear your solutions, your successes, because it's all about what works. Loki says, "Save the keyboard." We're going to take up a collection for a cushioned
Yeah,
keyboard.
they think I type so loud.
We're going to get Lori a cushioned keyboard.
Because I don't know. It just is comforting when I'm typing. It just, I guess it's loud. Got to be
We're
mindful of it every day, Susie says.
we're going to get Lori a cushioned keyboard. Okay, so mindfulness, daily mindfulness.
Yep.
That's key. I love that, Susie Q. Living in the present and just being mindful of it and living for today and in today. Because somebody, I think Loki, it was you. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. So I love that, we be mindful of the day, and when it's thrown up, just to be quit. Yeah. And they're not the person I left in the past. I love that, Susie Q. Whether we lost people in the past because we left, they left, somebody died, um, we can't change that, can we? We just can't change that. We're with
Hey,
who
running with scissors.
Hey, running with scissors. Hope you didn't fall. Um, we're they're not the person in the past. We can't replace the past. I've been told that, and it's very true. My goal isn't to replace the past because I know that can't be done. My goal is to be with who I'm with in the future, or not in the future, in the present, and enjoy the heck out of that person. I like that, Mike. Try to see people's motivation and understand and try to develop that relationship. I love that, Mike.
Yep.
Develop that relationship, see their motivation, see their heart, develop the relationship, put your energy into that relationship. Ponzione, yeah, just move forward. Past is past.
Miss Luck says, try to make others smile, help where she can.
I love that, Miss Luck. And I don't know about you, but I think for me and for a lot of other people, we get from giving. When you put a smile on somebody else's face, my guess is it probably brings a smile to yours.
Vicky said, don't bring up things that happened in the past.
Yeah. Oh, Maria, I gotta write that one down. There's a reason the rear view mirror is smaller than the front windshield.
Instead of looking backwards, you got to see what's in front of you.
Oh, I love that. And that's true. I mean, we can't forget the past. We got to be aware of it, right? Especially, here's what I think is important about being aware of the past so that I don't repeat things of the past. I don't want to forget the past. I don't want to forget the people and places and things that are important to me from the past. I don't want to forget my past screw ups because
Hey, Kimmy.
I want to remember and learn from them. But I don't want the past to hold me back. I love that. There's a reason the rear view mirror is smaller than the front windshield. Okay, so Susie Q says if I see the same red flags, the guard goes up. Makes sense. Hey, Camo. Camo, your commercials crack me up. I love them.
He's
So
definitely a good man.
he is. So, what are some other things that you guys have found that have helped you be successful to? That's my dog coughing. He's okay. What are some other things you guys have found that have helped you be successful to leave the past in the past, or to at least not let it interfere with your present?
Well, thank you for listening, Mike, while you're cooking your dinner. That's what Joe was doing, was cooking dinner and listening and participating.
These people who are cooking dinner, man, I don't know what I'm going to nuke tonight. My boyfriend's the cook. He's a good cook.
I'm doing just takeout tonight. I've been cooking for videos all week, so and we had Jackson over the weekend, so this today is takeout.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay.
I have been craving the Parmesan bites by Domino's with a fish sandwich from McDonald's. I don't know why. That's a weird combination, but yeah, that's what I
Lori,
want.
is there something you need to tell us, Lori?
No, yeah, a long time ago that was long taken care of. So
So, yeah, so any ideas that you guys have or things that you think you might like to try to help keep focused on the present, or things that you think you've heard other people say that helps them stay more focused on the present, because I'd like to learn new things too. I really would.
y'all make me look at the time because of
Loki
dinner.
Loki's going to need to start cooking dinner.
See, I agree. Like my ex had a tattoo with his ex's name on it. I never asked him to take it off. And when I got with Tim, I have my ex's tattoo on my leg too. Because of we're confident where we're at. That was a stage in his life and my life from our past. It defined him and brought us together. So why would we make the other person erase it? I'm not ashamed of my past. It led me to where I'm at today and who I am. Same with him. So yeah, I don't have any problem with pictures of her with an X in a photo, uh, any of that for the kid, nothing. So I agree with you.
Yeah. And in my situation, my boyfriend is a widower. Um, while I've had relationships since my previous, or quite some time ago, boyfriend, fiance passed away, I lost somebody that I was going to marry. I have photos of him, you know, we understand that that's our past. We've both suffered loss of somebody that we loved. His is more recent. But we talk about, I don't freak out because he talks about things that they did together or whatever. I mean, they had children together and have a grandson, and I can't imagine being offended at any of that. That's a significant and long part of his life. And so, for me, that just is natural. And I might bring up, something that I did with, my fiance or whatever. So, there are certain things that, yeah, I think depending on the circumstances that we're tolerant of and that we understand, because that's a meaningful part of somebody's past. And so it still is a part of their present. Sunflower, I like what you're saying, is one thing you do is forgive those who have wronged you in the past so you can let go and move forward. That's huge. That's huge. Because if we don't, we stay stuck. And that's huge.
Yeah. And you don't have to find counseling either. Sometimes talk to yourself, basically. Write out what I always try to write out pros and cons, not on paper even per se, but in my own head. Before I make any decision, I weigh out the pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
What you've got to figure out what works for you, the inner you that will help you move forward to find what it is that you really want. One, you've got to know what you're looking for. One, what do you really want for yourself and in a partner? And if you know all these answers, sometimes you don't even have to ask the question anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, Pununzioni, it's called respect. We both respect that we've had these losses, and in a way
Yes.
discussing some of that was what brought us together. Um, but then now we have our present, and we move forward. And you're right, Mike. Past experiences can lead people to their present and to being together. Um, it's it's important that I think the past can be stepping stones to where we are now. And as long as we don't let the past be a bungee cord. I don't know if you've ever seen those things. They have them a lot at like NFL experiences and at fairs and things where, you have a bungee cord wrapped around your waist and you try to see how far you can run before it snaps you back. If your past is a bungee cord,
Mm.
it's healthy. If it keeps snapping you backwards. If it's a place you might visit every now and then, or if you have some memories that come with you, that's one thing. But if it snaps you back too much, then you just can't go back and live there, I guess is what I'm
No.
saying. So yeah, not worrying about what other people have done to you. It was, it's one of the things my clients and I used to talk about is that people from your past are probably not sitting around worrying about you. So why are you sitting around worrying about people from your past?
Yep. See, I was always told that you could talk to yourself, but when you answer, then you've got the problem.
Actually, it's when you lose your own arguments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I argue with myself and lose my own arguments, then I'm screwed.
See, Miss Look, there's nothing wrong with wanting a relationship where you can trust in friends or a partner. If you can't trust that you're saying something to them that stays between you two, or that they can give you back what you put into it, then yeah, that tells you right there that they're not who they say they are or pretend to be.
Yeah. And Susie Q, what you're bringing up is something that I think a lot of people deal with when you've been put through a lot in a past relationship and it's hard to get past that. Um, Only you can decide whether or not you feel you can enter into another relationship, and what it will take for you to do that. I think it goes back to kind of self work and self worth, and just being right with yourself first. Um, I I think I shared this um, in another podcast. My last significant relationship ended a month before the pandemic started. And at the same time, I left my job. I went out on medical leave and then ultimately wound up retiring. So it was kind of the trifecta: end of a relationship, pandemic starting, and retiring. I was like, what the frick? Where did that train come from? And because of the medical issues, it was kind of ill advised that I like get out and do things during the pandemic. I sort of ignored that initially, and tried to kind of just sort of casually date a little bit, which didn't work. And then I became very isolative. And I was like, okay, could somebody get the number of that train that just hit me? And I really was like, I just need to like seal all the doors and windows and just stay home. It's safer. But gradually, as things changed, and as I went through a lot of self-reflection, I'll be honest with you, I did like online therapy, and I did a lot of taking care of Mel. And it was probably one of the best things I could have ever done. So you just have to know when you have to do some taking care of you. And and it's okay to not be in a relationship. That's another thing. Somebody said that earlier. It's not like a prerequisite to life that you have to go from one to another, or that if you're not in a relationship, there's something wrong with you. I think it's that if you're in a relationship, just be the best version of you, be willing to grow, be honest with yourself and that person, and just keep on keeping on. Several of you have said that some of the things that have helped you are making good friends on YouTube and on the internet, people that you can trust. That's good. Oh my gosh, if you trust people in this chat, that's dangerous. I'm kidding. It's actually, I feel the same way. Hey, Holly, I feel the same way. And it started on Lori's, well, partially started on Lori's late night. Now that's quite a group, right? People from the late night, facts, right? That's quite a group,
Yep.
especially since some of the topics we talk about.
Yep.
But that was one of the YouTube groups where I thought, if I can talk about stuff and say things in that group, I can pretty much say anything.
Yep.
And one of the groups we did there, one of my things I talked about there. So
I'm the one who I get the hits on being a nasty, disgusting woman on it. And I was like, you know what? I'll wear it then. I will wear it because if you're that immature, you couldn't even realize what the topic was about. It's because you watched it though, didn't you? So,
and I was the toy lady.
yeah. Well, no, I'm actually that person too. They were all mine and I was the one. Yeah. So, but it's okay. I don't care because, it just says a lot about their character. But what they don't realize is the reason a lot of us are close is we do talk outside of YouTube. A lot
Yeah.
have met outside of YouTube.
Yeah.
So people do know each other and we're able to tell each other, hey, knock it off. Or, hey, we don't like this. You know, people can come to me and say something that they think that Tim's out of line. I can go to them and say, hey, I think you're out of line. And we all get up in our feelings, but we can let it go and appreciate each other and talk to one another. And yeah,
Yeah. And I met Zanime, who was on here earlier. She and I met off YouTube, and she and I are working on some projects together. But
yeah,
then more through YouTube, and then I met her mother, and then I've met other people through her channel and through other channels, and it just kind of grew. And so, I mean, you have to pick and choose who you trust. I think that would be fair to say, but the internet can be a dangerous place, and as Anime pointed out earlier, cyber stalking, cyber mobbing, there's a lot of stuff on the internet that's difficult, and YouTube is the number one social media platform for a lot of mean streets and cyber stalking and cyber mobbing. So you have to be careful, but if you do identify with some people that you can talk to, and maybe you also have formed a friendship with, that's okay. um, Going back to something Susie Q said here, she said she's not sure she could ever trust somebody so much again based on her relationship. What happened changed her. I get that, and sometimes it doesn't take much to change a person. But here's the hope statement. She says, who knows what's to come? So
yeah,
she's leaving herself open to some hope, okay? And that, I think, that is important. um Miss Luck brings up something that, and this is a sensitive topic and kind of a trigger warning for people here, that when somebody has been sexually abused,
yes,
um, that can definitely impact someone over a lifetime in many ways. And I don't want to get too deep into that subject, but um, I, I do think that whether it's professional help or just whatever somebody does to deal with that kind of thing from the past. It's very important too, because it certainly can affect subsequent relationships, as well as somebody's sense of self-worth and self-esteem. Definitely. It's a serious subject, and one that we may look at discussing sometime in the future. We'll just have to look at. So, Loki, you're the weirdo. I thought I was the weirdo. Come on. Yes, you did know how to use the toys, but just another reason why we got along on YouTube. Um, and Susie Q, that's important. Everybody needs an outlet. Sometimes it's easier to share with people but you don't know for a lifetime. Sometimes it's easier to share with people you don't know. There's a I think sometimes on the internet there's a sense of anonymity that allows people to share, if that makes any sense. An Iron Horse, yes, you're very trustworthy because you're so innocent. I know. I know. Poor Loki's cleaning up the coffee he just blew out his nose. Um, Sometimes anonymity on the internet has actually allowed people to be themselves, if that makes any sense. Um, so
And
it's what.
everybody knows they can reach out to me on IG. I've had lots of people, and I don't mind talking to people. Anybody needs to talk, they want just to bounce ideas. I'm always willing to help. And they know that their stuff is private and it's never came out.
Yeah, that's great. Susie Q, I'm like you. I pick up on people's energy. I'm an empath. I trust my sixth sense. Um, and I do give people respect and trust. It's up to them to mirror or break it 100%. Once it's broken, I have to decide if it can be repaired or not. But I totally feel you on that one. Totally. And Sunflower, I get that. Here's the bottom line. Everybody has to make the best decision for himself or herself. Um, what's good for one person isn't good for somebody else. And even in a relationship, what's good for the missus may not be good for the mister, or what's good for one missus isn't good for the other missus. So we kind of say we don't want to yuck somebody else's yum. Different things work for different people.
Yeah.
And I think being open-minded is really important. My mind sometimes gets closed like a steel trap, and I have to remember my own advice that I have to be more open.
And
Um,
curiosity does not kill the cat. So nothing wrong with being curious out there.
Sometimes the cat's tail gets cut off.
But you don't ever kill the cat for being curious.
Yeah, I love the ideas that this group has had, about staying open and hope and communicating, nurturing
Yep.
yourself, the ways you try to stay in the present, not getting too far ahead of yourself. I think sometimes in this culture we can think too far ahead, like, where am I going to be in 5 years? Where am I going to be in 10 years? Remember that interview question? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know where I see myself in 5 days,
Nope.
5 hours. Heck, I'm hoping, I wake up tomorrow.
And you always got to create your own goals around what your hopes and dreams are before you don't hang your stuff on somebody else to make your happiness. Because now, once you're in a relationship, you work together to reach those dreams. Um, Sometimes you're going to be on different paths, but as long as at the end of the day, you guys end up you're on that same main path going down the same direction, you know, that's what it counts. Is one day at a time. You got to love yourself and look within yourself so that you can project that to outside around you. And that's how you find that person that's similar to you and has the same feelings and goals. Because when you're open, they can feel it.
Yeah, I like that. Mike, celebrating the 5 year anniversary of you asking me that question. I love it. Miss Luck, I love that. You made an effort list, made a point of celebrating breaking every rule you could after you were free. You know, sometimes that's what it's about when we're no longer being controlled by somebody and we get to write our own rules. Oh my gosh, that just had to have felt so good. So liberating.
Yep.
As Susie, you're right. We're all a little broken, we're all flaws, and the flaws are the interesting part. My God, how boring would this world be if we were all the frickin' same?
Yep.
Ugh.
And you know what? Sometimes being a little broken, it lets that other person, because we all have those little parts that can get that extra, you know, tender care or that extra loving part. Or I find that where we're strong, somebody else might not be as strong. And where they're strong and we're not, it's a compliment.
Amen. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. That the Japanese have an art form called kintsugi, and they take broken pottery and they fill the cracks with gold, and it makes the pottery more beautiful. And to me, that's just fill me up, fill my broken parts with gold. Let my flaws shine, because I'm just going to have more flaws tomorrow.
Just be careful, Miss Luck. You don't want him to know where you're at. So always safeguard yourself.
Oh, Iron Horse, the world without you, I no, I cannot imagine.
No, because I'll tell you what, sometimes, there's just a lag or a disconnect. Maybe your jokes aren't, or your topic are falling flat. You put Iron Horse and Casey in the chat, it's lit. It just popped. And yeah.
And then you throw in
So,
Loki and Camo and the rest of them, and it goes nuts. And Loki, you're right. Sometimes we just have to find that other person that fills those cracks in our life, and it's a beautiful thing.
yep. We do have to laugh at ourselves and let others laugh with us at ourselves instead of taking it so personal all the time. We tease Joe. Joe always cracks and picks on the guys. Well, as women, we're all part of the same family and the team. So why aren't we being poked fun at? He was like, nope, nope. I had to literally tell him that all the women have agreed and they all had to tell him we want it. So it's nice to be respected, but in the same sense, we all want to be included in the laughs too. So,
Oh, oh yeah. And Camo, you're right. I think I know for a long time I was not patient with myself, and so that made me impatient with other people, and I'm still not very patient with myself sometimes. And I'm really focused on the not being promised tomorrow, because I am, on the downhill slope of my life. But we do have to stop and laugh at ourselves. I do stupid crap every day. I was pouring tonight. I was feeding the dogs before the show started, and I started to pour their food into the water bowl. And even my dogs were looking at me like, "Mom, seriously? You're making floaties in our water bowl." So yeah, you got to laugh at yourself. Mike, I like
yeah.
that. That's why you like old vehicles, because it's the imperfections that make them cool and beautiful. Isn't that the truth?
So Mike has a fetish for old women, is what he's saying, and old men.
Yeah, we're all old vehicles, Mike.
We know what he was secretly implying. He's a granny chaser.
Well, I'm a granny, but he's married, so and I'm in a relationship. So and Sunflower, I think that's really true too. Having somebody be able to joke with and kind of pick on, but in a fun way, that does make a relationship fun. My boyfriend has a good sense of humor, and we can kind of poke fun a little at each other. And I think just poking fun at life, poking fun at ourselves, um, not missing an opportunity to laugh. We're not
Yes.
judging, Mike. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're judging.
We're
Don't.
judging.
I'm not gonna lie to you because you know what our friendship's based on honesty. I'm judging. I am judging. You granny panty chaser.
That's what makes this group, and that's what makes these podcasts, and that's just what makes life go round. Here we are talking about a serious subject, and we said there'd be some humor. And Susie Q, you're right, you got to have humor, and that's actually a really great way to stay grounded in the present. Watch a
Yep.
funny movie, watch a funny TV show, read the comics, read a funny book, you know people watch. Oh my god, people watch. Go somewhere and people watch. You'll be laughing your rear end off. I watch my dog sometime, and I'm like, really? What was the universe thinking, when they created dogs? They're hysterical.
And they're
So,
more loyal and loving than most humans are.
isn't that the truth? Isn't
I know
that the truth?
mine would die for me, but I'll make sure that they never have to put their lives to put them in that situation because I will defend their lives for
Loki, I like
human
that.
sake.
So now Mike's car hole has to redo his logo to be granny panties with his logo on them. I like that. New marketing concept. See,
With
this
granny panties on his truck so that it looks like he's a granny panty car hole.
guaranteed to fit over depends. Even better. Oh my gosh, the ideas. See the brain trust that is in this group. We come here not only to discuss, relationships and personal stuff, but also practical problem solving and growth for businesses. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. And we discovered is it's weird, but usually YouTube has always been a predominantly male platform in a lot of the communities. But ever since the late night started and Sisters in Arms and Strait, we actually have almost a 49-51 split of men and women.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
It
cool.
is.
Well, it just goes to show we can hang with the best of the guys, right?
Exactly. There's a
Well,
maturity that the men know that they can talk and we don't judge, and that we can give it back and they don't judge us for talking the way we talk. We could just be ourselves. We could
right,
talk cars.
right,
We could talk serious and we could talk smack just like they can. We're equals. Nobody is better. I hate women who say they're over men and men who think they're over women because we're all equal in the end. We were all built the same way, created the same way. We all came from the same space, literally from our mothers. So when you think about that, we already have that common ground to build on.
that's right. And on that note, guys, we are going to wrap up this podcast. Just want to thank everybody today for coming out to talk about. We started off with some serious things, but my gosh, look what we were talking about at the end. Granny panties and redoing Mike's car
Car
hole
holes.
logo for his car garage. So you never
He
know
can
where these
redo his own car hole. I'm not
yeah.
touching the car hole. That's
Yeah,
his. That's
so
on
we
him.
you never know where these podcasts are going to go. But thank you
No,
for sticking with us during these 2 hours, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another topic. And like Miss Luck says, we're neither a victim or a survivor. She's a warrior. She's a thriver. And that's what we are in this group. We come together, we cry, we laugh, we talk about serious stuff, we joke. And over the next 2 weeks, you guys take care of yourselves, take care of the people around you, and come back in 2 weeks for more straight talk with Lori and Mel. We're real people, real topics, and we love you guys.
Yep. I want to thank everybody for coming out, um, and for participating. This wasn't an easy subject. There's going to be some that might be harder and some that'll be lighter. But you guys always come in and you participate with your sense of humor and with your seriousness. It's a mixture of both. We couldn't be here and do what we do without you guys and your support. So much respect, much love, and we will see you in 2 weeks on the next side. Don't forget, tonight is Thursday. Check out Community Post to find out where we're going to be for our late night. Or today's Wednesday, my bad. But still late night tonight. Check out the Community Post. Everybody's listed and the times that we're going to be and where we're going to be. So, on that being said, peace out. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.